Hey, welcome back to the Wide Right Podcast. I'm Manny Navarro from The Athletic, joined once again today by Adam Lichtenstein of the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. It's Wednesday, September 25th, right around noon. Adam is back with me to preview Miami, Virginia Tech, recap last week's 50 to 15 victory at USF, and to talk about Cam Ward's shot at winning the Heisman Trophy. He's the favorite right now. But I wanted to start today's episode, Adam, with a unique story that's going on in college football because I think it's going to affect everybody pretty soon. The first holdout, if you want to call it that, technically it's not really a holdout, but quarterback Matt Sluke from UNLV announced late last night on his social media account that he's going to sit out the rest of the season because the financial commitments UNLV had promised him were not met. Sluka's NIL rep told ESPN's Pete Thamel that an assistant coach at UNLV promised him a minimum of $100,000. None of that money was paid. UNLV, of course, has started the season 3-0 with two Power Four wins over Kansas and Houston. Adam, who is going to be the next player that holds out for money? And why will this somehow involve the Hurricanes? Because you know that's what's going to happen. You and I are going to be writing about this somehow. Let's also not forget, by the way, you can sit here if you're a Hurricanes fan and roll your eyes at the old stupid journalists, but let's not forget we almost had a little scenario with Simeon Barrow this summer that was sort of related to finances. He ended up transferring here from Michigan State. Had a little bit of regret, I think, because he might have gotten offered more money elsewhere. Took a few days off, returned to the team. It ended up well for Miami, but I think it's inevitable that we're going to get to this point, are we not?
Oh yeah, we already maybe not with Miami in particular exactly, but we already had the Jaden Rashada saga as well,
Right.
where Florida didn't pay out, or their collective didn't pay out what they were, I guess, promising. I don't know. I don't have any insight beyond I don't have any insider info on the Sluka situation, but it just seems like, there's competing sides. I think Pete Thamel reported that Matt Sluka wasn't getting paid what he was promised, and then I think the university through some other friendly outlets might be like saying that they wanted to raise the ante, like rate, after a couple wins. So who
Right.
knows what the exact truth is? But yeah, exactly. Like when there's no contracts involved, if it's all verbal, just anyone can back out and do whatever. There's so much free movement. There's not really a lot of guardrails in place to prevent anything like this happening. I think ultimately we're going to end up in a situation where players are going to have to sign contracts with their schools like an employee would, like a professional athlete would, just to guarantee the players get the money that they're promised and guarantee the schools that they're not going to have to deal with a holdout.
Yeah.
It's such a messy situation where there's very few things kind of keeping things in check beyond people's promises.
Yeah. Leverage is the name of the game, Adam. And the one thing I think we need to think about with college is all of these guys are still young. And the leverage is, in many of these cases is, well, I've got the pros after this, right? I've got a future at the next level. Those guys can pay me. I'm going to sit out a bowl game or I'm going to sit out X amount of games at the end of the year because I want to stay healthy. In this scenario, Matt Sluka has eligibility left. He can redshirt the rest of the season and come back. And you're right, there are technically no guardrails for any of this going forward. That's a part of this evolvement between NIL, potentially a bargaining agreement between a players association and whoever is governing college sports. That's probably what's next for this game. But I was thinking to myself with this story, imagine Cam Ward, right? He's the Heisman favorite. We've mentioned this. We know he's making a good amount of money. Signed an NIL deal well over $1 million to come here and play at Miami. Miami is taking care of its players. They're paying guys a good amount. But what's to stop from Cam Ward from the week before the ACC championship game saying, "Well, guess what, guys? We just finished undefeated, and I think I'm worth a little bit more than whatever amount you guys are paying me. I'm gonna just sit out the rest of the year till somebody writes me a check." And at what point, this is are college programs like Miami and others ultimately held under the thumb of these players because there are no guardrails against this. At least in the NFL, if you were to do something like that, they can revoke your contract, they can cut you, they can take you to court, sue you. All of these deals, all of these NIL deals, yes, there is some legal binding contracts that are signed, but at the same time, none of it's public record. The NFL, you have agents, you have a players association, somebody is watching all this happening. Right now, there's nothing in college football.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing stopping Cam Ward from doing that. He could do that if he wanted to. Do I think he would? I think he's too much of a competitor to do that, but he could. There's nothing stopping him. And until we kind of, the Wild Wild West term is overused, but like until there's more strict, enforceable rules that aren't going to get overturned in a court case, just there's nothing kind of keeping things in check. It's kind of, I mean, for such a long time, the balance was of power was in favor of the schools and the coaches. Now it's getting kind of flipped on their head where the players can kind of do what they want. Some people applaud that, and I think there's, you need to find a balance between, the players having some power and the coaches and schools having some power, to basically come to some kind of agreement where you're not going to have a holdout in the middle of the season, but you're also, players are going to get paid what they're worth and what they're owed.
Yeah, it really is crazy how much all of this is changing. And I know a lot of old school people who are just like, Manny, why are you talking about this? You're a moron. The Hurricanes are 4-0. They're number 7 in the country. But I think we all need to recognize, Adam, that this sport is evolving. Like we just went to from a non-playoff system over the last 10 whatever before 2013. We didn't have any playoff. We've gone to a playoff. Now that playoffs expanded to 12 teams. It's going to go to 14 soon, and players are getting paid. It's amazing. Like you got to stop and think about how much this has all changed and how it affects guys like Mario Cristobal, who grew up in an entirely different era, right? Played in a different era, takes great pride in trying to make his university great. And yet these are the kind of hurdles and problems that are going to affect him and other coaches when trying to build championship programs. And really, like we said earlier, the players have all the leverage right now because nobody is policing any of this. And and I'm just scared. I'm scared, Adam, honestly. If you're a Miami fan, you should be a little scared. There are players on this team that could ultimately leverage their situation to make more money out of the NL. And unless your program answers the bell, could completely screw your season.
Yeah, so it all kind of reminds me of I read this book, The Club. It's about the Premier League, soccer. But the Premier League and soccer in general reminds me a lot of college football and kind of reminds me of where college football is right now. Uh, because in soccer, no player is they have contracts, but they're not guaranteed to stay with a team for the length of that contract. So if I'm a star player for Manchester City and I have 3 years on my contract, Real Madrid can approach my team and say, "Hey, we want to buy this player, buy out his contract, and we'll pay a fee, and we'll pay the player this much money, and yada yada yada." And that player can switch teams. A player can switch teams every single year, if they wanted to, and if another team wanted them, and if things come to terms. Um, which is kind of similar to where we are in college football, where a player can transfer basically every year to the highest bidder, to whatever fits better. But the Premier League, much like college football, is trending towards becoming more like the NFL. If you remember a couple years ago, a lot of the biggest soccer teams in Europe wanted to form a super league
Right.
where there was no relegation, no promotion, where the same teams were in it every year, kind of like a franchise model like we have in American sports. College football is kind of trending that way too, with both players getting paid, with a potential super conference, with or with the Big Ten and SEC becoming the biggest conferences. Like everyone wants to become the NFL because the NFL is the most successful sports league in the world. It's the richest sports league in the world. Um, but the problem is people don't watch college football for it to be the NFL light, for it to be minor league NFL. People watch it because it's different and it's a sport. It's a separate sport almost.
There's pageantry, there's
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 pageantry.
tradition, there's
Yeah.
all those things that have made this sport captivating for over 150 years.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a crazier sport with different skill differentials. Like, you're not going to see the crazy results that you see in college in the NFL. People like it for different reasons. So, but there's a lot of resistance to college football becoming more like the NFL. I know, just my own personal opinion, I hate all this realignment that's been happening the last couple of years. I think it's taking a lot away from college football. On the other hand, I think players should get paid for their work. So it'll have to come to some kind of equilibrium eventually. I mean, it'll take someone smarter than me to figure out where that is and how that works, and it's a mess right now, and it has to be addressed.
It really does, and that's something that I think, while we can sit here and live in our own little world down here and say, well, the Hurricanes are having a great season, maybe they're going to win an ACC championship. The fact that all of this major change is happening in this sport, Adam, it can't go like we can't just ignore it. We can't just bury our heads in the sand and say, hey, this is an important story not to talk about, because it is. It's an important story to talk about, and it's something that I think we got to monitor as not only sports writers, but if you're a Miami Hurricanes fans, you should be paying attention to what's going on in your sport right now, because It really is an incredible amount of change, and it'll help you kind of see and maybe appreciate Miami's NIL collective and the job that Mario is doing to adapt. There's a lot of angry Florida State fans right now that are upset with their program for not sort of adjusting to the times and recruiting and getting and struggling the way that they are. Florida fans are certainly upset with their situation. So the Hurricanes are in a good one right now, but days like today, when you have a quarterback basically announced on a 3-0 team, mind you, that has a chance to win a group of 12 playoff spot, that he's going to sit out the rest of the year, that's got to rattle your bones a little bit, Adam. It really does. And I think it's important that we talked about it. But let's shift our conversation now to the Hurricanes. And you wrote a story this week about Miami kind of recapturing its swagger, so to speak, because those guys, you and I were both in Tampa for the game. At the end of the game, there was a late interception by Miles Muyong, and he ran over to the crowd and pulled one of the fans' turnover chains, one of the cheap knockoffs, not the real thing, obviously.
Not the
That
real
that
one.
thing that thing is hidden away somewhere. But he put it on and celebrated, and there was this whole just sort of, I was on the field for the last 6 minutes, and fans are singing, "It's great to be a Miami Hurricane." It was a great scene. Felt really, really cool, Adam. Tell us about your article, what you were trying to express in it.
Yeah, I mean, just from watching the team the last 4 weeks, they just seem like they're having a lot of fun. They're making fun of opposing teams. Like their traditions, like players were gator chomping. Mario Cristobal was breaking a gator chomp over his knee and stuff. Like, the fans were. I think Cam Ward did the whole, in addition to his own like kind of signature celebration, like gave a horns up and then thumbs down. The other day, Mish Powell was dancing after his pick with the teammates, with his teammates and stuff. It just seems like the team's having a lot of fun, and obviously they're winning. So there's every reason for them to have fun. They're blowing out their opponents. It just made me think of like, okay, now granted, I was, not watching college football in the 80s and 90s because I was either not alive yet or just a child, an infant. But, I've watched the U documentaries and stuff, and the way those teams in the 80s and 90s would celebrate and dance around and have fun and have that kind of University of Miami swagger. And I just, I asked some players and I asked Mario Cristobal on Monday about just, how do you balance having that fun with also not doing anything stupid that's going to get you penalized. And they, I got some good answers from all of them, and it just seems like, I mean, Miami fans are used to that kind of swagger. They want that swagger and that fun, like the teams in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s had. So I'm like, this seems like it's fitting, like it's right. So that's kind of what I wrote about, and like the players said, like they're enjoying it, they're having fun, but they also, they can't be selfish and they can't get penalties, and they just have to kind of keep it within balance while at the same time having fun and kind of connecting with the fan base kind of through that emotion and celebration.
Yeah, it was definitely neat for me. I ran into a lot of fans as I was walking on the field, and one guy said to me, Manny, you suffered through 20 miserable years covering this team. I'm kind of happy for you that we're finally winning. And I was like, damn, you're right. It has kind of sucked for me covering a bad team for the last 2 decades, that's gone through all this turmoil. But I'm not celebrating anything yet, Adam, because
Yeah.
we know this team was 4-0 a year ago, and the wheels came off. And I just wrote this for one of the stories that's coming out in the Athletic tomorrow. We do our power rankings on Friday, actually, Grace Rayner and I. And I was researching last year's game against Georgia Tech. And I don't know if you knew this, but the Hurricanes were 19 and a half point favorites against the Yellow Jackets last season going into that game before we know the infamous ending. Miami this Friday against Virginia Tech. Guess how many they're favored by, Adam?
19 and a half,
Nin-
20 points.
19 and a half points. Very similar scenarios. They're expected to blow out the Hokies, who are 2-2 and have struggled. But again, we're at an important crossroads. Personally, I think this is an entirely different team than the one we saw a year ago, especially at the quarterback position. I think that'll make things different this time around. But I think it's interesting, Adam, that the point spread is literally the same as it was a year ago against another ACC foe.
Yeah, it's a little spooky, but I agree. It's a totally different team. I think something that stood out to me, and I might write about this in the future, that Mario said a couple times, is that this team is tired of all the crap, all the stuff people have levied on them, all the mediocrity in Miami football for the last 2 decades that basically hangs over the program. And they're all just kind of tired of it, and they're ready to get rid of it. And I will see if that, if they play a crappy game against Virginia Tech and it's close and they have to take a knee with 25 seconds left. We'll see what ends up happening. But I don't know. I think I do agree. This is like a totally different team. I think it's a much better team than last year. I think their opponents. I'm trying to think who they played the first four games last year. Obviously,
Tech, yeah,
The
Texas.
A&M game stands out last year. But I think the opponents overall have been better than the opponents they had last year. USF is a decent team. Florida is an SEC team. Even if
Yeah,
not a great one. FAMU, FCS, sure, but a decent FCS team, and Ball State is a MAC team. They're whatever, but like they've dominated exactly in the exact fashion you would want a great team to dominate worse opponents. They've done everything I think you could really ask of them. So I mean, well, it might be a little spooky that the line's the same, but I think I don't think we're going to see a repeat of last year.
no, I don't either. We'll talk about the Virginia Tech game in a moment. You talk about dominance. Miami, just a couple numbers to share. They're outscoring their first four opponents 52-10, third highest scoring team among FBS right now, and then the defense 11th in terms of scoring defense. So you're beating people by 42 points a game here on average. That's really really good. And we talked about last episode just how explosive they are. They still are number one in terms of explosive plays, 37 plays of 20 yards or more. They've only given up 9 plays of 20 yards or more, which is 19th, top 20 in the country. So, from an explosive standpoint, they're doing a great job. In talking about the USF game, one of my big takeaways, and I'm going to start with defense this time, is they made some adjustments. USF had some success, Adam, running the up-tempo style in the first half. They had the long drive that resulted in a field goal. Miami's defense really gave up one touchdown, and that was on a short field. But they did give up quite a few yards, at least in the first half, in terms of USF being able to move the ball down the field. Um, but Lance Guidry talked about this in his press conference. You got to make adjustments. You got to make adjustments, and they did. The only criticism I had is I thought Mario should have called the timeout during that long field goal drive. He should have done that earlier when guys were winded, and you can see that things were catching up with them. But outside of that, I mean, they held USF to 60. I think it was 62 yards rushing, 68 yards, something like that. This is the same team that ran for over 200 against Alabama. So for me, you can certainly criticize some of those opening drives defensively, but Lance Guidry got the job done against Byron Brown and an offense that was supposed, pretty good. Not a bad group of five team.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, the adjustments they worked. I mean, they shut out USF for the entire second half, and even it's a cliche, but like they bent but didn't break. They only gave up that one touchdown. That was on a trick play. And like you said, a short field. They allowed a couple long field goal drives, but a couple of those were 50 plus yard field goals that they allowed,
Yes.
like the Martin Grammatica's kid. But they bent but didn't break. They kept the Bulls out of the end zone for the most part. Like, and then second half started, they just clamped down and didn't allow anything. I mean, the fact that they held them to what, like you said, like 70 yards rushing, this is a very good rushing team with a very talented dual threat quarterback, and they didn't do anything. I mean, that's impressive, and I mean that's it's hard to say much else. Just, they did great they've had a great season so far on third down defense. They've had done pretty decent, I think, in red zone defense.
Yep.
Like they lead the country in sacks. Like there's kind of not much else you could kind of ask from them through four games. They've done very well, and they have been tested. Like I said, USF's not a bad team, and Florida, for all their troubles, like has guys on offense and that they kept in check. So I mean, the Guidry's defense, I mean, is has been phenomenal through four games.
Yeah, I got all my notes here from earlier this week when I was breaking down games across the country. I did Miami and Virginia Tech as well. You look at pass defense in particular, they're 12th in opponent quarterback rating, completion percentage 34th, only 56.6% of completions. For opposing quarterbacks, one touchdown allowed through the air, 8 interceptions. And then from a run defense perspective, they're sixth in the country, 64, just under 65 yards a game, 2.47 a carry, which is top 10. Third down defense, you mentioned it, number one in the country. Actually, on offense, they're number one in the country. On defense, they're eighth in the country, 24% on on that, and then 11th in red zone TD percentage, only allowing touchdowns on 28.5% of the drives that end up in there. So Lance Guidry's getting the job done. Obviously, they're going to face some better offenses in the weeks ahead.
Are
But
they?
well, some offenses are going to be better. I think Louisville's offense is going to be better. I think Cal, if Jaden Ott gets his act together, he'll be better. And I think this week against Virginia Tech, Kyron Jones and Bashil Tootin should be a better combination than maybe some of the ones they faced already. But you're right, it's not like they're playing any super studs at the quarterback and running back position right now, statistically.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, yeah, Virginia Tech's a decent team, but are we sure they're that much better than USF is? Like, I mean, they've lost to Georgia Southern, or Georgia Southern, Georgia State.
No,
Who they or
Virginia Tech lost to Vanderbilt and Rutgers.
Vander, Vanderbilt and
Yes,
Rutgers, but Vandy lost to Georgia Southern. That's where I'm getting mixed up.
right.
Um, so yeah, like they've lost to Vandy and Rutgers, who are competent. I think they're competent teams, but they're not like not like they lost to Georgia and Clemson.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, I mean, like I said, Miami, they're doing everything that you could want them to be doing. Like you said, the red zone numbers, the third down numbers, those are winning team numbers. You get off the field on third down and you extend your own drives on third down. Like that's everything you could want.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Offensively, Cam Ward was excellent again, although he did miss some open receivers. He talked about that. The Hurricanes finished with some good rushing numbers thanks to Jordan Lyles' school record 91-yard touchdown run there at the end of the game. But I think it's fair to say, Adam, if we're going to be nitpicky here and complain about Miami, I think it's that they don't really run the football with great authority early in the game, right? Like they don't come out and just establish themselves like we're going to bull rush you right down the middle. I think some of it is because of the way other teams are playing them. USF certainly stacked the box and said, "Okay, Cam Ward, you beat us," which is kind of a dumb approach considering the way Cam Ward is playing. But my point is, I don't know if you agree with me, but it's kind of like in the early going, even against Florida, they don't come out and run the ball for 7-8 yards a carry like maybe some previous Mario teams have.
Yeah, I wrote about this earlier in the week as well. Actually, I agree completely. I counted it up the other day, and they only had, I mean, not you had the Jordan Lyles 91-yard carry, which
Right.
obviously fantastic. That's record-setting, rush from scrimmage for UM. But besides that, they only had three carries against, or three halfback rushes, three running backs carry the ball for 5 yards or more three times, which
Yeah,
is not very good.
it's a big
Uh,
stat. Yeah.
yeah, like that they're not getting any explosive plays really out of the running backs early in the games. Like Martinez he had three touchdowns and he had like 30 yards total. At one
Hmm.
point we were cracking up in the press box because he had three touchdowns and nine total yards.
Yeah.
Um, Mark Fletcher, he had I think 50 yards against Ball State, but only a couple yards against USF. Those are talented guys that are better than those numbers. So I mean, I think they'll turn things around. And I asked Mario about this on Monday. He thinks that they're close to breaking out in that regard, and I wouldn't be shocked if they do. Part of it is, teams stacking the box and daring Cam Ward to beat them, which, like you said, is seems kind of stupid. I think even Shannon Dawson said that on Monday, where he was like, they stacked the box and let us, gave us man coverage on the outside, and we were like, okay, because that's not a recipe to beat Miami, I don't think. But yeah, they just got some slow starts. I think in the running game. The numbers are kind of skewed because I know against like Ball State, like AJ Allen came in the third quarter. I think they rushed like eight times in the first half against Ball State. Then AJ Allen comes in the third quarter and breaks off like two 50-yard runs on his first two carries of the game, which kind of skews the numbers. And then Jordan Lyle had his 91-yard run, which skews the numbers again. So the overall numbers look okay, but it's something that's been lacking. And it is nitpicky because their offense has been phenomenal, largely thanks to the passing game so far. But I think they'll get better just because Mark Fletcher and Damian Martinez are too good to be rushing for like 40 yards combined in a game.
Yeah. I think it's just one of those their coordinator Shannon Dawson said it's pick your poison. And I think right now teams are saying, well, we think we can stop Miami through the air. And I got to tell you, most defensive coordinators will tell you their number one priority going into every game is slow the running down, slow the running game down, right? And that gives you a chance. It's just Cam Ward is so freaking good that it doesn't matter if you try to slow down the run because he is going to pick you apart. He is going to read coverages. and make tremendous throws. And so to this point, nobody's been able to hang with Miami because of that, because he is such an elite quarterback. That's phenomenal. All right, let's shift our focus here to Virginia Tech a little bit. I mentioned earlier they lost to Rutgers this past weekend, 26-23. Hokies are 2-2. Their wins are over Marshall and Old Dominion. Miami's won three in a row in the series against the Hokies, although they didn't meet last year because of the schedule changes before we had the addition of SMU and everybody else to the conference, Cal and Stanford. Here's what I will say about Virginia Tech, if you're wondering. They're ranked 49th in the ESPN Football Power Index. Their toughest opponent was Rutgers, who's ranked 46th. They're averaging close to 30 points a game, which is 75th in FBS, and they're giving up 23 points a game, which is 67th, middle of the road. They've got 23 plays of 20 yards or more, so they have been a little bit explosive on the offensive side. That's 18th. Miami, I mentioned earlier, is first in the country. Yards per play defensively, they're giving up 5.33 yards per play. That's 65th, middle of the road. They've also given up 15 explosive plays on defense, which is 70th. The biggest problem I see with Virginia Tech when I break them down is that Kyron Drones, who we know is Cam Ward's cousin, has just not played well to this point. He's 16th in the ACC in quarterback rating, 4 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions. And if you watch the Rutgers game, even if you didn't watch the Rutgers game, you just watch social media, he had that terrible safety that he got. You have to almost laugh because it's such a ridiculous play where the offensive lineman, I think it was his right tackle, basically gets pushed into him. And as he's falling to the ground, Jones decides, well, I'm going to just fling the football backwards and it goes through the uprights like a field goal. And it was such a ridiculous play. He's been sacked 7 times so far. The offensive line has given up 7 sacks, and their PFF rankings 101st in terms of pass blocking efficiency. So when you look at this matchup on paper, unless Kyron Drones plays out of his mind and the offensive line for Virginia plays out of their mind, Miami should win this game and cover the 19.5, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Kyron Drones, dual threat guy. He always has a risk. Sorry if there's noise in the background. My dogs are playing very loudly. Um, but with a dual threat quarterback, there's always a risk that you break off a couple runs and that gets the offense going, or they score on a couple quarterback scrambles or something like that. That's always a risk. But like you said, they're not playing particularly well. The offense hasn't been very good so far. Drones has struggled. That's not really what catches my eye with them. The one thing that really catches my eye with Virginia Tech is their pass rush. Antoine Powell-Ryland is a very talented edge rusher. I think Virginia Tech, I just looked it up for an article earlier. It's like I think they're tied for seventh in sacks. Like they got 13 sacks, I think, this year. So they do
Yep.
have a very capable pass rush. Now, the downside, if you're a Hokies fan, is that excuse me, excuse me, I
No,
have to edit that out.
no problem.
The
You all
downside
right?
if you're a Hokie, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
The downside if you're a Hokies fan is that Miami has a very, very good offensive line,
Hmm.
which has been particularly good protecting Cam Ward. They've allowed 3 sacks all year. So, you have a strength going up against a strength. And I don't think, even if those kind of things cancel out, I don't think the Hokies have enough other strengths to kind of make up for things on the other parts of the field.
Yeah, I agree. And look, Drones is completing if you look at his QBR, 51.6% of his passes. That's a really actually no, 59.8% of his passes. My fault. I was looking at what the Hokies are giving up in terms of a pass defense. 59.8 completion percentage, 7.1 yards per attempt. Those aren't great averages in the second half, lower half among FBS quarterbacks. Again, 4 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions. And the running game is, Tootin is a good runner. He had a good performance last week. You already mentioned APR on defense, but Tootin had 122 yards and 3 touchdowns on 15 carries against Rutgers. So he is an effective back. He might be the best running back Miami's faced to this point. But again, the Canes' run defense has been really, really good. I think this is going to come down to, do the Hurricanes put an inordinate amount of pressure on Kyron Drones and force him into mistakes? Because I think they're going to do an okay job shutting down the run. I think Tootin will get some yards, but I think ultimately this is going to be about putting pressure on Drones, forcing Virginia Tech's offense into mistakes, and then Miami capitalizing and running away with this thing. So, will be an interesting game. 7:30 kickoff Friday. Um, What's your pick? Do you have one right now? What do you think? How many points? If the odds makers are tuning in for Adam's opinion right now, what do they
Yeah,
cover the spread?
I mean, I think it's really close. Like I could the 19 and a half 20 point line's a really good one.
Hmm.
I think they I remember what I picked for our official Sun-Sentinel predictions, but it was around 20 points. So something like I could see 38-17, something like that. They can get Fetty Whopped.
Yep.
That sounds about right to me. Virginia Tech might get a few scores on the board, but I don't really think this one's going to be particularly close.
Okay. I'm gonna go with like 45-17. I think Miami still scores well above 40 points against this
Yeah.
defense, and has a good day. All right, let's talk a little bit about some other ACC games before we wrap this up with some Heisman talk. I don't know if you've looked at the ACC schedule this week, but 4-0 Duke, Manny Diaz. They host 3-1 North Carolina Saturday. Manny Diaz 0-3 all time against Mac Brown when he was the head coach here at Miami. Mac Brown, though, of course, coming off an embarrassing 70-50 loss at home to James Madison. Adam, what is your take on the Blue Devils and Tar Heels?
I mean, can UNC's defense really be that bad? Are they really that bad? They weren't that bad against like Minnesota and stuff at the beginning of the year. I just remember I was watching that game on Saturday early afternoon, and like I was at a sports bar watching the games with another Hurricanes writer, Jordan McPherson, and every time I turned around to look at the TV with that game on it, I'm like, James Madison scored again. Like,
Yep.
how is it 53-21 at halftime? I mean, I don't know if Duke is legit, but I don't know, man. I think UNC, they've got some issues there. I mean, Mac Brown apparently reportedly, considered resigning after that game, which I mean, hey, if James Madison puts up 70 on you, I don't blame him for that. But I don't know. I mean, maybe Duke. Let's go. I'll go Duke with the upset win there. I don't know what the point spread is, but I'll go Duke with
Well,
the upset because UNC's got some problems.
yeah, Duke is favored to win by 2.5. Malik Murphy has played well to this point. UNC has their quarterback issues. Murphy's got 11 touchdowns, 4 picks. I think he's averaging over 260 yards a game passing. So he's doing a good job, the Texas transfer. But really, Duke is winning because they haven't played anybody yet. Their
Yeah,
schedule has been really, really weak. They beat the hell out of Middle Tennessee State. The toughest team to date for Duke is Northwestern,
yeah.
which they won
I
on
did
the
catch
road.
that game. Yeah, I did
Yeah,
catch that.
so UNC's best win to this point is over Minnesota. That was on the road by a field goal, but they're having quarterback issues. It'll be an interesting game. Couple other games just
Just,
to touch
just,
on.
just before we leave Duke,
Yeah.
just a thought. I don't know what the rest of their schedule looks like. For the next month, undefeated Duke versus undefeated Miami in at Hard Rock at the start of November. That'd be fun.
That
There'd be narratives abounding for that game.
Absolutely, but I have a feeling Duke's going to lose before then. Um, we got Louisville, the 15th ranked team in the country, playing at Notre Dame. Some key injuries for the Cardinals last week. They lost, I think, their number 2 or number 3 receiver for the season. They've got their running back, Maury Smith, banged up. They've got a cornerback. Their top cornerback is injured as well. Notre Dame, of course, already lost to NIU, but I think an important game for the ACC for just perspective, right? People who look at the ACC say, well, there's only 3 teams ranked right now: Miami, Louisville, and Clemson. If Louisville goes on the road and loses at Notre Dame, I think it's going to look poorly on the ACC. What's your take on the Cardinals?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I only caught like bits and pieces of their game against Georgia Tech. I know it was close for a while, and then they kind of pulled away a bit towards the
Yeah.
end. I mean, I still think Louisville is probably a top three, top four team in the ACC. Georgia Tech obviously played them pretty close for a while, so Georgia Tech, but we've seen a bit of Georgia Tech and know that they're a capable team as well. But yeah, I agree. This is a big test for Louisville. See if I mean Notre Dame, albeit they had the loss to NIU, is still a talented team. Is that in Louisville or is it in South
It's
Bend?
it's in South Bend, and Louisville beat them a year ago, held them to 44 rushing yards. Marcus Freeman's team is 1-3 since he's been at Notre Dame when they run for under 100 yards. Louisville did manage that a year ago, but at home. And Louisville 7-3 went under their coach when they hold opponents under 100 yards. So I think that's kind of the key to that whole
Hmm.
game. I wrote about it for the Athletic this week, but yeah, it's important game though, I think, for the ACC.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, although Notre Dame affiliate member of the ACC, so
That's
really,
true.
really the
That's true.
conference wins out either way. But
That's true.
um, I don't know. I kind of my gut's telling me Louisville. I don't know. I think Notre Dame with Riley Leonard, I don't know if he's started clicking for them yet, really.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. Just something in my gut says Louisville.
All right, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I picked Notre Dame to win that game. Clemson gets Stanford this week. Stanford had the big road win at Syracuse last week to get their first ACC win in conference play since coming over. But the story here is Clemson's offense. They've been really good the last few weeks. 66 points against Appalachian State, had 59 in a blowout of NC State last weekend. Do you think like Clemson is the second best team in the ACC like I do?
Yeah, no, I agree. The Georgia game, I mean, Georgia does bad things to a lot of teams. And maybe throw in some week one hiccups or whatever. I mean, but Clemson seems to have righted the ship. Uh I wasn't as high on NC State as some other people coming into the year, but still, putting up what is it, 50 points in the first half is an accomplishment. I don't care who you're playing. Uh, so yeah, no, I do think Clemson's the second best team. I do think, even though they're not on Miami's schedule, decent chance we end up seeing them in Charlotte come December. I just think they are a good team, as they may not be the elite national title contender that they were, 5 years ago, but they're still very competent, still a good team, and they're. I mean, I could see them. I don't know their schedule off the top of my head, but wouldn't be shocked if they kind of run the table or go 10-2 this year.
Yeah, they get Florida State a week from now in Tallahassee, then go to Wake Forest. So it's not exactly a gauntlet of
Yeah.
opponents left on their schedule for them. Last ACC game I wanted to touch on, Florida State takes on SMU Saturday at 8 p.m. So if you're looking for a night game to watch and you want to see what two ACC rivals look like, Rhett Lashley had a big win last week for the Iron Skillet. SMU beat the hell out of TCU 66 to 42. FSU won their first game finally. The Seminoles beat Cal. They solved the Calgorithm. Uh, 7 sacks, needed every single one of them to get that win 14-9. FSU's offense ranks 126th in both scoring and yards per game, just absolutely abysmal. We moved SMU up to number 5 in our ACC power rankings this week from 10 because that loss to BYU 18-15 at home doesn't look so bad anymore because BYU is ranked and 4-0 and they beat uh, who was it last week? Kansas State.
Kansas State, yeah.
Yeah, so kind of a Rhett Lashley's team, maybe we got to start paying attention to them.
Yeah, no, I don't think SMU is bad, especially now that they're figuring out their quarterback stuff with I think Kevin Jennings is starting for them now
Yep.
instead of Preston Stone. So
Hmm.
they seem like they figured things out on offense. I don't think they're going to score 66 points again this week because FSU's defense is competent. Like they held Memphis to 20, held Cal to 9 points. Like their defense is good, but their offense is just putrid.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they're gonna do with that because it's like you look at like it's not just DJU. It's the running backs aren't doing well. The line's not good. It's the receivers aren't making plays. It's bad all around on offense. You're only scoring 14 against Cal, 12 against Memphis. It's bad. Like you said, 126 out of 134 in scoring offense and total offense. It's just bad, and I don't know where the points are gonna come from. It's not like DJ is a freshman or a sophomore, like, and you're like, oh, he's gonna get better as he goes along. Like, this is who he is. I really don't know where the points come from for them, and I think that game could be close. It could be kind of like the Memphis game where it's like, okay, they're not allowing a lot of points to a good offense, but they're not scoring any either.
I don't know what the largest spread has ever been in a Miami Florida State game, but it could be huge by the time the Seminoles
God,
come
yeah.
to town in late October. All right, let's talk about the Heisman because right now Miami's star quarterback Cam Ward is number one according to odds makers. He's got the best odds to win it, plus 400 according to BetMGM. Ole Miss's Jackson Dart, 550 is next. Jalen Milroe, 700 from Alabama. He's after him. And then Nico Iamaleava, plus 900. Those are the top four for the Heisman. Next week, the Athletic is going to start its Heisman straw poll. I did it last year. I ran it for us, accumulating all the votes. Uh, but I got to ask you, if you had to put $100 right now on someone to win the Heisman Trophy, Adam, who would it be and why?
It would be Cam Ward. Just because, I mean, first off, he's been phenomenal. I mean, he won like a bunch of weekly awards this week, and he didn't even have like his best game. He
Hmm.
was missing guys. Like I think of like the Xavier Restrepo pass he just overthrew, where Restrepo would have scored a touchdown on that play. I'm like, I think it was a wheel route. Um, he had him wide open and just overthrew him by a step. And I think Cam Ward would be the first one to tell you he made a few mistakes, and he had a pick which wasn't really on him. It was more on Jacoby George, but is what it is. But he's looked amazing. He's in every aspect of the game, and he doesn't have to play an SEC schedule like Nico and Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe do. Um, the best defenses he's going to face during the season are again like FSU and Louisville, which are not which they may be decent defenses and stuff, but they're not Georgia, they're not Alabama, they're not LSU. Although LSU's defense isn't great, but it's not an SEC schedule. He has an
Right.
easier schedule than all those guys. Um, there's nothing to really stop him from continuing to have an excellent season, except for himself, really. I mean, like, yeah, there are like I was saying, Virginia Tech has a good pass rush. They could pressure him, but he's shown he can handle pressure. He can handle being, he can move the pocket and make a throw. He can escape the pocket and run for a first down. Like, there's really nothing, I don't think, in his way. There's no excellent defense during the regular season that he has to face, I don't think. So if I had to put money on it, Cam Moore's got my bet.
Well, I certainly think for all the reasons you said, it makes total sense. Miami, especially if they run the table, go 13-0 and make the playoff, win the ACC title. I agree with you. I think those other quarterbacks, it's going to be really hard for Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, and Nico to go undefeated. Even Carson Beck with Georgia, like they have some tough conference games. Quinn Ewers at Texas, who's up there as well. All of those guys are going to beat up on each other. I would be shocked if there's an SEC team that goes unbeaten. But in the event that does happen, I could totally see that being the reason why Cam Ward doesn't win it.
Yeah.
Even if he puts up better numbers than those guys and performs better, people are always just going to say, well, the SEC is the best conference. And so the best player in the SEC should get the Heisman. I would say this too as well, Adam, watching the Heisman ceremony and tracking it last year. I do think there is some voter fatigue with just picking a quarterback every single year. And that's why I think Travis Hunter, I predicted when I did my oddly specific predictions that Travis Hunter would win the Heisman. And that's basically because he's doing what Shohei Ohtani is doing in baseball, right? At least when he
Hmm.
was a pitcher, where he's just so dynamic on both sides of the ball. And it's so rare to see somebody dominate like that. And to me, I wrote about this for the Athletic this week, but Travis Hunter's put up ridiculously good numbers. I'm going to call up my oddly specific predictions here that I wrote and filed earlier this morning, but I think he's got 37 catches to this point, which is a top 10 in the country. I'm going to read it to you right now. Yeah, he's got 37 catches. That ranks fourth among all FBS receivers, 472 receiving yards, which ranked sixth. Five touchdown catches is tied for fourth. He's done all that while grading out as a top 10 cornerback, according to Pro Football Focus. So, look, I know Colorado's 3-1. They lost to Nebraska already. But he's doing things that are just ridiculous. This weekend they get UCF in Orlando, which is a 3:30 kickoff. I think a lot of people are going to be tuning in to see that game because UCF is unbeaten, and they've got a good team themselves that could potentially compete for the Big 12 championship. But I think if you're thinking about what roadblocks does Cam Ward face, well, he's got those SEC quarterbacks, he's got Travis Hunter, and probably Boise State running back Ashton Johnson, who could potentially lead his team to that Group of Five playoff spot. He's been putting up ridiculous numbers as well at running back. So, what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, no, Hunter, I think Hunter's pretty far down compared to like those other quarterbacks in the odds. That's not a bad bet there. You're probably getting
Yeah,
probably getting good odds on him.
plus 2,000 right now.
Those are good odds. I would take that. But because yeah, you're right. Like he is like Shohei Ohtani. But the conversation kind of comes down to like, let's say it's the end of the season and Hunter continues playing this well and Ward keeps playing this well. Uh, it comes down to do you pick the guy who's doing very well at something nobody else does, or do you pick the guy who is just the best at a traditional thing? Like I think of was it 2 years ago? When Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani were going, neck and neck for the AL MVP. Now I'm biased because I'm a Yankees fan, but Aaron Judge is having an all-time great offensive season, like hit 62 home runs and all that jazz, like an all-time great offensive season. And Ohtani is having a very good offensive season and I think it was top five or so season on the mound. So do you pick the guy who is having a better season than everyone at the plate by far, and that's all he does? Or do you pick the guy who's very good at both, but not having the best season at either kind of thing. And that's kind of
Yeah.
like that's kind of where things might end up this year. And people will look at it differently and they'll say if you're very good at two things, it's better than being great at one thing. And some people will say, well, you can't blame Cam Ward for not playing linebacker.
Right.
Um, so I don't know. We'll see where things come down. I mean, like I said, I think Cam Ward is a pretty good bet. I think Travis Hunter with those plus 2,000 is pretty good odds. Like that's good. That's a good dark horse pick there. Ashton Jeanty might be a good dark horse pick too if he keeps running for like 8 touchdowns a game or whatever. That's not a bad bet, but yeah, I mean, like there's a Cam Ward's the favorite for a good reason. He's been excellent through 4 games.
No question. I think he will be in the conversation. I think Miami will be undefeated by the time those votes are in. They should finish the season undefeated, the regular season, and he'll be in it. But if I'm a Miami fan, you're saying to yourself, man, who does Cam Ward really have to beat out? I think Travis Hunter is the guy who's going to get a lot of love just because he is so unique and he's doing things. People said, well, Chris Gamble at Ohio State back in the day, he played receiver too. No, this is different. This guy is playing every snap both ways and putting up huge numbers. And yes, Colorado, they're not going to be in the national championship discussion. Breaking news: Deion Sanders will not be making the college football playoff this year. But if they go 8-4, Adam, right, and they win a game like Saturday against UCF, and unbeaten UCF as 16 and a half point underdogs, they go into UCF and win, and Travis Hunter plays a big role. I'm telling you, I think a lot of people are going to jump on the Travis Hunter bandwagon. So that's the name I would look out for if I'm a Miami fan.
Yeah, you also got to wonder though how he holds up. He got hurt last year. He's playing 120 snaps a game. Like
Yeah, no, no,
that's
you're right.
and not
100%.
and not at easy positions. He's not just playing like not that playing quarterback's easy, but he's not standing in a pocket. He's playing quarterback and receiver. Those are high impact positions. He can take hard hits, be giving out hard hits. You got to wonder if he's going to be able to hold up through a whole year playing both spots.
Great questions. Great questions. Adam, I appreciate you coming on, man. Anything we can tease to that you're writing this week that's hasn't come out yet?
Just yeah, you can keep up with my coverage at sunsentinel.com or on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at AB Lichtenstein. Also on the fun side of things, before I head down to Miami for the Virginia Tech game on Friday, I'm going to be doing an AMA on our Miami Hurricanes. So some fun times on there. Going to answer a few
Good.
questions before I make my way to the stadium. So you can check me out there too.
Awesome. Make sure you check out Adam, follow him on Twitter. And thanks again for coming on. Second week in a row I brought you on. I know the fans were reacting. They love having you, hearing your voice and having us talk ball together. Carlos Ledo will be doing a mailbag with me tomorrow. We just got weird hours, Adam, and I'm coaching soccer. For those of you wondering where the hell's Manny half the time, I'm coaching soccer in the afternoons. My 9-year-old daughter, her Catholic school team. I am the coach for that team. We play Mondays and Wednesdays in the mid afternoon, and so I got practice Tuesdays. I'm out for like the middle of the afternoon on, and so I haven't been going to any press conferences or anything and attending. I just went to my second Canes game last weekend in Tampa, but I will be there Friday night for Miami, Virginia Tech, and
Yeah,
watching closely.
you got to remind the girls how you do anything is how you do everything.
That's right, Adam, for sure. Thanks for
What's
coming
the
on.
what's the injury report for today's game?
Oh, well, we didn't even talk about Jalen Rivers supposedly coming back, right? And Ruben Bain might be back this week for Miami. But for us, we've got 11 kids. A couple of them are on suspension. Academics, man, it's tough.
Hmm.
These Catholic schools, you don't make the grade, you don't play, man. And two of my best players are out dealing with academic issues. So we've got a game now this afternoon in Miami Lakes. Hopefully we get the W. We're 1-2 right now. My daughter Olivia is the goalie. She does a great job. We lost 5-0 on Monday to one of the best teams in the Catholic School League. But it could have been 15-0 if Olivia wasn't in goal. So I'm proud of her for doing a good job. All right, man. Good talking to you.
Thanks for having me.